the PEEKaMEET method. Today we have Flossie O'Leary from Ripple Effect, and we have Tony Comaskey. Did I say that correctly, Tony?
Yes,
From
that's correct.
Chilaca.
Chilaca. Yeah.
So Flossie, why don't we start with you and you tell us about Ripple Effect?
Oh, certainly. Thanks, Brenda. So the Ripple Affect is about affecting positive change. So it's a consulting practice that kind of blends strategy and alignment of that strategy internally, and then living that strategy externally and that purpose in how you work with the community. So through strategic partnerships and community engagement. And then as to support both of those, there's some governance and leadership that connects them.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And Tony, why don't you tell us about you and Chilaca?
Yeah, so my background has always been in fast-moving consumer goods. So Chilaca is a burrito company that's opening burrito stores in Ireland. Yeah, and we previously had some stores through a different company. So this is our second chain that we're building in Dublin.
How exciting. So yeah. I understand you and Flossie have a very interesting story about how you met, and we'd just like to share that with our audience. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was driving for Uber, and I picked Flossie and her husband Scott up one Saturday morning to take them to the airport, and had no idea who they were until we were in the car and started talking. Yeah. And Flossie and I knew of Flossie from the American Ireland Fund from many years back. And when we were doing our first burrito chain of stores in Ireland and introducing burritos to Ireland, Flossie attended our first fundraising event at the Celtic Tavern in downtown Denver. And we had lost touch, and that was, even that I was very much aware of Flossie as being a director of the American Ireland Fund and very involved. It was just by chance that we met these years later on an Uber run to the airport, and we got talking about business, and it led to something.
It did. Yeah, it was so interesting, Brenda, because and Scott may have even like ordered the Uber, so there was no name recognition or anything, you know, and it was early, you know, like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, something like that. But you know, my ears piped up when I heard this fine Irish accent of Tony's, you know. And so I started asking him some questions, and the more and we talked a little bit about business, like my business too, but then the more he told me about what he was starting, I'm like, did you ever do a pitch at the Celtic Tavern? And he goes, you know, with his great accent, oh yes, we did, Flossie. And I was like, Tony, I was at it.
Yeah, I think we were talking in the car for a while before, and I still had no idea who Flossie was. You know, I was just, you know, chatting away, and then it all started to fall into place. And
what was the giveaway moment where you're like, oh, I know this lady? Was it after she said the pitch, or was it before that?
So I think it was when we talked about the Celtic Tavern event. For me, I think that was when it clicked. And I like I said, I remember us inviting Flossie. I remember Flossie being there, and it was just that we'd lost touch in the years in between, you know.
Oh, and so tell me what has spun up since that you guys have connected with your current business.
So that has made it has made a massive difference to our current business. Since Flossie came on board, we now have our first round of funding. Flossie sits on the board. We have two weekly meetings. So it was a phenomenal piece of luck for Chilaca and me that Saturday morning when we picked up Flossie and Scott. It worked out very well. Yeah.
It really did, Brenda. He was at first talking to me about, like, maybe as a consultant, I could help him from both the strategic partnership side and my strong business development background. And And then, so he didn't know this, but my goal is to get on a corporate board in addition to the credit union board I'm on. So I said, I said, well, we could explore that. Obviously, he's got to raise money, right? So I knew he didn't have a lot of cash. I said, what would you consider about the equity instead of as a consultant, as a board member? And he's like, oh, like it just came. It was just effortless. And it's been so exciting in just a few short months to see those two investments come in, a lot of excitement about the rest. And like the sense of, at least for me, that there's this cohesive team of board and, and really like executive leaders that are making this happen together.
So this is very interesting because the business is actually overseas, and you are able to meet up with all those board members and connect and raise these funds even during COVID.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much so. And Flossie has been a driving force behind that. In a matter of months since July, we updated the business plan. We did a prospective investor list, all of this initiated and driven by Flossie. And then we started talking to some of those prospects, and it paid off. And in addition to that, we now have a meeting every 2 weeks with the board members. And again, Flossie organized that. And we've got momentum. We believe there's more investment on the way. Would you agree with that, Flossie?
Absolutely. There's a
That's
lot
awesome.
of interesting indicators out there.
So your chance meeting in an Uber ride, Flossie has probably given you some type of referrals or connections to her connections. And likewise, you to yours, even in Dublin.
Yes. Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, we've kind of come, sorry, I'm a little, yeah, we have got some contacts. Our Chilaca has, through Flossie, if that would be the way to put it.
So tell us about your next steps. You've got your chance meeting, and it sounds like you guys are having the snowball effect going in the right direction. So what are the next steps?
So what we did was we brought the team back together, the team that built the first chain in Dublin. And right now, and so by bringing the team back together, that included the financial advisor we had before, the chief operations officer, the real estate expert, right through. So we're actively looking for our pilot store in Dublin.
And what are your goals?
So our goal is 20 stores within 5 years, 18 in Ireland and 2 in Central Europe. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to note that when Tony did this the first time around, it was about 2.5 years between the opening of the first store and the second store. And we already have enough funding for the first store. It's a matter of finding the right location. But I think because of that great experience and the really kind of diverse thinkers that he's brought together, we're all like, well, let's try to get, right now we're just another 200,000 euros, which is about 250,000 US. And we have a second store, so there's an economies of scale of being able to open them together or like back to back. And then that also, I think, creates a really strong statement in the community that this isn't just like a mom and pop one location. This is a chain that's, making entry into a market. And I think that same kind of curious, let's do this right, let's run. Tony often says, like, when people are running away, let's run in,
He's the fireman.
He is the fireman, absolutely. But that's, I think, also looking at the continent that way, like, if the idea is about perhaps expanding there, it would be silly to just do all 20 stores in Ireland. And so the idea of doing the first 18 there, but having the last 2 of that business plan as it gets achieved beyond the continent gets us like a pinky toe in that market. And we can start making, some decisions by assessing it as part of that.
Yeah, I'm flattered by how far you both have gotten since meeting in July. Tony, where do you think you would be if you didn't have that chance meeting right now?
If I didn't have that chance meeting right now, I think we wouldn't be off the starting blocks. I think the energy and the organization and the contacts that Flossie brought, it energized everybody, or not just me, but people around me, and focused us. And I think it's the reason that we have round 1 funding for the pilot store. Yeah.
Uh,
And I'd just like to add one thing to what Flossie was saying. One of the things is that COVID has created an opportunity in the Irish market, because Dublin City Council, it's very rare for they to give out hot food planning licensing. So now, because of the COVID lockdowns, we are now getting an opportunity to acquire units that before this would not have been available. And also we're able to adapt for the current situation with ghost kitchens, delivery, all that sort of thing.
That sounds like all the stars are aligning. Whenever the world thinks they're falling, they're actually working out for you both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Brenda, one of the things I was reflecting on before this is, especially as it relates to PEEKaMEET, is that, if Tony hadn't been from Ireland, like a place where, my ancestors are from, and that is very special to me, and I didn't hear his accent when I opened or sat down in his Uber, I probably would have not figured it out, right? And then I think about PEEKaMEET, and I was just wondering, there's got to be a lot of, even just in the Uber world, because this is not Tony's only Uber connection story, but he had a 1-year non-compete, right? So he did this while he was, Uber driving, while he was also planning the new restart, right? There's got to be a lot of other folks for whom, it's easy to make an assumption that Uber drivers are doing that for, like, instead of a job or something like that, ridiculous, right? But look at this creative entrepreneurial guy sitting in front of us, and he was doing that while, and what a great way to be thinking, about his work while he's not at the computer or not on the phone. And so I would think it would be so interesting to be able to, when I'm waiting for my Uber to show up, or once I get in the car, to also see a little bit about who this person is if they're on the app, so that you don't have to just hope some of that randomness happens that we benefited from.
Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely, and we do have those filter connect. There's just so many filters, and there's so many features in there in the video elevator pitch. And really, we hope there's going to be more chance meetings like yours, and there's going to be a lot more success stories like yours.
Well, Flossie just reminded me of something, Brenda. And sometimes it would be necessary for me in Dublin to get between the stores fairly quickly. So I was in and out of taxis because I didn't have a car in Dublin. And I always asked the taxi driver, and this is exactly as I'm describing it, I always said to them, what did you do before you were driving taxi? And I've had every answer from I was a stock trader to I was the assistant to the chairman of the Irish Times newspaper. I mean, just amazing stories.
That's a great icebreaker question. What did you do before you were doing this?
Yeah.
So sometimes when I get in the Uber, I was like, well, what's your other job? Because usually they have something else going on. I was in with a chef once, and so she was like, I just got to get away from my husband and kids. So
yeah. Well, and there was a way back before we left Ireland, some time back, there was this guy Jerry Ryan on the radio, and he was zany and people loved his show. And he had this regular taxi driver in New York that he used to talk to, and that would come on the show every week and tell him stories. So I often think that it's important to start the conversation, but that that the person sweeping the street or cleaning the floor in the restaurant has something important to tell us, that it's not just the executive, if that makes sense. Absolutely.
And you just were telling me earlier about this random meeting someone in Whole Food. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I'm not even sure myself over how many conversations all of this occurred, but there was a guy by the name of Evan Lunsford on the counter at Whole Foods, and I already had a chef going to Dublin, but when I heard that Evan had been with Chipotle in the very beginning, we ended up also bringing him to Dublin. And so he quit his job at Whole Foods Tamarack, went to Dublin and spent 9 months there with his family, and helped develop the recipes and train, and because at that time they didn't know what burritos were in Dublin. We were the first to introduce the product, and that meant we needed expertise from here.
So what was your conversation starter with Evan?
I have no idea. I cannot remember. You know,
he wasn't handing your burrito one day, was he?
he wasn't
handing your burrito one day, was he?
Yeah, no. If I remember, he was on the seafood counter. It had nothing to do with you know, or one of those meat counters. But you know, I find those conversations can continue, just like at Whole Foods Tamarack. I was talking with Edward this morning, and mostly we're talking about dogs because, you know, his wife shows dogs, and so you know, I mean, it's just like you said with your quote from Richard Branson, just go talk to the person, you know, at the table next to you. They may know how to advance your business, or, you know what I mean, or have some, and in this case, Evan did know how to advance our business.
Yeah, Richard Branson has one simple quote as well. It's like, everyone should be a networker. So he doesn't elaborate on all the opportunities that are out there, but look at him. There's plenty of opportunities. He's had his hands in lots of things.
Yeah.
So Flossie, what is your typical icebreaker question?
Oh, I don't know if I have a typical one. I'm often a very customized person. So, and I probably don't go to, I am a good person for your app, because I don't like going to formal networking events, because I don't think you authentically connect with people as much. And so I probably don't have the traditional icebreaker, but I'm curious. So I often ask questions, and it depends on where I'm meeting someone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm attention to detail. So I asked, but I really like Tony, like, you know, what was your former position, you know, to an Uber or Lyft driver or whoever. But yes, I find that very interesting. And some people, there's a list of them. There's all kinds of articles written about how to break the ice. So for a lot of introverts out there, they need something, and they're scared on the inside. So things are not coming out of their mouth.
One thing I do like to ask, now that I think about it, is, you know, what's something that's gotten you really excited, or that has been really meaningful for you this week?
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, it often is, but it doesn't have to be. And then it becomes this person-to-person conversation too. And I think it sometimes helps distinguish you from the person who just wants to ask you questions because of what they want to get out of it, right?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you know, sometimes in those networking events, and I do it too, and I hate that I do it, but listen, we're gonna get to the chase here, because everyone else is doing, what do you do, you know? And then people say that, I'm like, well, you know, that's just so ridiculous. I don't know. You know, I do lots of things. What are you asking particularly about?
Yeah, I know. I have that same feeling, like love-hate relationship with that question.
Like,
I would try and discipline myself at parties to stay away from the question, what do you do? Because this maybe says something bad about me, because if I heard somebody's an accountant, I start putting them in a box, or they're a lawyer, you know, I start putting them in a box. Whereas I think it works really well if one is genuinely interested in other people and lets them. And my wife hates this because she thinks it's very American, but one of my opening things is, what's happening with you? And people just open up the moment, you know what I mean? There's a kind of,
yeah.
But Anne doesn't like that. She thinks it's very American when I do it with Irish people, you know, what's happening with you?
So one of my friends, her light thing to say is, how's your spirit today? So I was like, well, that opens up lots of things. You know, homework or play, but you know, but networking is essential, and it's just really difficult for a lot of people to get out now. And there's so many virtual events, so I just think taking any opportunity that you can get, whether it is that Uber ride or you're walking. I know we're supposed to do the 6-foot distance, but you know what? You got to make the human connections, because the isolation is just not good either. So, and you know, it just impacts all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes it's getting to know someone without an agenda. So like what, couple network groups I'm part of, we do things together to get to know each other, right? Like I think of it early in my career, I was in a service club, and I developed some great relationships. I still have my financial planners still through them, because of the trust we built with each other while we were doing something else. And this women's group that that I'm part of, Brenda Camp Experience, is the same way. Now I do business with a lot of those women, but we did other things together first to kind of build that rapport. And maybe kind of on those lines, I don't know if Tony told you, but he actually met what ended up being our first investor years ago.
Oh,
It was the relationship they built, like over breakfast in the same lodging facility when he would be in Dublin, that really helped this gentleman really begin to trust and I think ultimately down the road be willing to invest in us, because he saw Tony's work ethic and his passion, and he knew whatever Tony touched was going to be successful.
No,
that's a great compliment, Tony.
Yeah, it's very nice of you to say that, Flossie. And but I think you touched on something there, Flossie, is that the best relationships, including Mike, I think come initially when we don't want something from it. We have no agenda. Because mostly I think I probably elbow to elbow in the bed and breakfast in Dublin started bitching to Mike about something, the Dublin City Council wouldn't do, or that there was a unit in Cork and I couldn't persuade them that we should expand to Cork or something like that. You know what I mean? So it was just conversational, and I never expected he would be an investor.
Yeah, so. I think I agree. Those authentic relationships are the ones that actually where things happen. If you're just making a sell, if you go in and that's your intention, right? You're the salesperson. You're not doing business. You're not going to do the work, get the job unless you go 6 to 8 times, because people just do business with people they know and like. So maybe the deal's not as great, but you know what? Like Flossie said, you trust this person. So why would you go take a chance with someone you don't know?
Yeah, and for him it was a courageous move because he was the very first investor. He couldn't look to and say, okay, well, this person invested. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was good.
So Flossie, can you just tell us when you guys are going to Dublin to possibly open these stores?
Yeah. Well, right now, and I think Tony is looking at plans and new stores almost every day. And what I really like is the strategy behind this. A number of the stores they've looked at might have made a great second or third store, but he's really clear that the first store has to be like perfect's the wrong word, but just the ideal kind of situation, the right size, the right location, the right kind of work, so that it really can create a buzz, right? And it can be what people remember, and that the other stores are kind of based on it. And I think because he's done this once before, he has a real clear vision and description of what that looks like from a very like day-to-day basis, as well as the broader marketing sense and brand. And so I think we're waiting. We won't be going as a board there for our first meeting until in-person meeting until after that first store is open. So I'm hoping, we haven't talked a specific date, but I'm hoping we're there also. And then there's the flying there, right? With everything going on in the world with COVID. But I'm hoping that at least the broader board, Tony earlier, will be able to be there by the end of Q1 or early Q2 of next year.
Wow, that's exciting. Congratulations.
I already have a potential second round investor who wants to have a burrito with me there, who's just moved back there. So we'll see.
That's fantastic. Just going back to something that you said, Flossie, about that first store, because we've worked with some of these people for many years, and these two words sum up for me why we choose this real estate guy. He said it has to feel right, inverted commas.
I like that, but that's the flagship. So it's the one that you want to emulate. You don't want to make better. You don't want to make the next one better than. You want to emulate it. So.
And to go to what Flossie said about the board meetings, Brenda, our second investor, Link, has a company in Ireland, and he said they made an exception for the first time when we met him. I think it was around, was it September that Flossie, that Mark and I met him. They had just made an exception in Dublin for COVID, but ordinarily the board has to meet in person, in Dublin, in Ireland. So we should be looking forward to that soon, right, Flossie?
Absolutely, I can't wait.
It sounds like a great perk for a chance meeting.
Right.
I need one of those. Tony, can you come pick me up?
No, I'm really looking forward to it because, we do love showing off Dublin. So I'm really looking forward to getting everyone over there.
Well,
Ah,
I look forward to
we're in a good 4 years, so 5 years, so it's time. Because Brenda, in Dublin's fair city, where the girls are so pretty.
Oh, how
Yeah.
beautiful, Flossie.
Yeah.
Irish ditty for you there now.
Flossie's going to be doing the Irish dancing later. Well,
Plus, there's a statue of Molly Malone at the bottom of Suffolk Street, the second location. And for one of our promotions, we had the radio station and we filled her wheelbarrow. We made it look like it was full of burritos.
Oh,
That's fantastic.
hey, that's a great photo op. He's creative. I mean, what is he, the marketing director over there?
Yeah, we had some fun with it for sure.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of you coming on today and sharing your story. And I'm really excited for a follow-up story, and tell me about your Dublin experience and how Chilaca's doing.